Namaste. Welcome to the satsang about the 7 Nafs, about the 7 stages in the development of the human soul. Before starting, let's have a moment of interiorization, an evocation of light of consciousness. Since we are going to speak about Nafs in this context of the Sufi tradition, let's start with this invocation of light from the teachings of Muhammad, but it's actually an invocation of this eternal, unlimited light of consciousness. So please close your eyes. Keep your back straight. Relaxation. The awareness of the present moment. The joy of being. We bring the awareness in the middle of the chest, a little to the right. The feeling of coming back home in the heart. And from the depth of our soul, we do together this invocation of light. O God, place light in my heart and light in my soul. Light upon my tongue. Light in my eyes. And light in my ears. Place light at my right, light at my left. Light behind me and light before me. Light above me and light beneath me. Place light in my nerves and light in my flesh. Light in my blood. Light in my hair and light in my skin. Give me light. Increase my light. Make me light. Keeping the light in our heart. We gently open the eyes, honoring the light. During this satsang, there will be mostly an introduction on this topic. First, a little bit why we are going to study about the nafs, about these levels of the soul in the Sufi tradition. We will speak about the relevance of the soul in the inner transformation. We'll refer a little bit to the 4 pillars of knowledge in the teachings of a great Sufi master, Ibn Arabi. Then we are going to speak about the stages of this, naming these 7 stages of the nafs, what they mean and how do they appear. We will speak also about the remedies related to the human limitations, so the problems related to the constriction of our soul. And then in connection with this, we'll address a very important topic about qualities, about divine qualities and about divine names in the Sufi tradition, in the Sufi and Christianity, Judaism as well. And then, still today, in order to have a taste of what this would mean, I will read for you a story, actually the confession of an a journey through all these stages of the soul. So the story of a sheikh, of a master, regarding all these journeys of the soul. And then we'll start later on speaking about each of them, the characteristics, the remedies, and so on. So why we will speak about this? Well, in general, speaking about the transformation, the spiritual transformation, it is essential to refer to this transformation of our soul. And I would start with gratitude for our Sangha, because in these years of practicing meditation and in a dedication to the spiritual path, we could see a lot of transformations, and this is very supportive, of course, for yourself, but for others, for many others who are coming and seeing that such transformations are possible. As any human being, as any individual, we can continue to grow, but there can be also stagnation, self-satisfaction, and even decay and decadence. And this is true for a human being, but it's true also for a Sangha, for a collectivity. And while the self-inquiry method, the Hridaya meditation with this self-remembrance, coming back to that which we are beyond just stories, personality, while this is the most important remedy in itself, the key healing element for our soul, still I could see people still fighting or stumbled in anger, jealousy, fears, and so on. So sharing about this is an aspiration to help, maybe to find new insights and tools for such an inner transformation. It comes also, now we had these satsangs about Shambhala, and so this realm of beings who out of compassion help human beings. So as an inspiration of all this, it came that definitely our Hridaya community can go deeper in a process of transformation, and then can be an inspiration for others more and more for this world which needs reassurance that these values and this moral and spiritual integrity is possible. And of course it starts with ourselves, so it's a deep contemplation of this. So we should understand that the transformation of the soul is what we are looking for in this life. We are taken by so many concerns, worries, thoughts. But if we look from the yogic's perspective, from the Sufi perspective as well, from any such perspectives of spirituality, it is not about grow in just possessions, physical possessions and so on, but is essentially a transformation of our soul, and this journey is about such transformation of our soul. So you may not ask anymore about just your fight, who is right in the fight with your partner, and with all that obsession about personal dramas, or just attachments to possessions and worries again and again, but you may start asking, how long am I continue to lie? How long I will continue to be in those states of panic attack, or constantly unsatisfied, or this unsatisfaction as a kind of constant element in my heart, in my life, or complaining about others, or self-criticism. How long will I continue to crave for just food or nice woman or sexual desires, just this, being lost in that? Not that this would be, sexuality would be something wrong, but being taken by that. How long should I continue to be in states of alienation, to be separate from myself? How long should I find myself not connected to myself and find days in which I feel my heart so rigid and so closed? So this life was given to us to clean these impurities of our soul. And unfortunately, we tend to carry all these limitations in a future life. And it is in this different way that we should look to our life. The relevance of our heart, the relevance of these transformations in our soul, how we are able, or in what measure we manage to drop some attachments, some fears, and to develop generosity and love. So just looking in this way into our life and not just focusing on being lost in fluctuating emotions. Sometimes we come with visions that are so impressive, so inspiring, from different traditions. In Tibetan Buddhism, that amount of compassion that comes through that lojong, training of the mind, actually a training of consciousness in that Tonglen, giving love, compassion, receiving suffering, and absorbing and integrating and sublimating that suffering of the world. Now, Geshe Chekava was completely transformed from that affirmation which he found, may I accept defeat and offer victory to others. And this seems far away from us, and sometimes I hear, oh Sahaja, but this is too far for me. It is not. It is for perfect beings. No, it's not for perfect beings. It's exactly for human beings who long for a transformation. It's just about this training. Or we may imagine this affirmation, may I accept defeat and offer victory to others, addresses to my friend with whom I just had a strong debate. He should learn and recognize that he should accept defeat and offer victory to me. Actually, it refers to ourselves. So that affirmation is telling us that the transformations should start with ourselves. So this emphasis on our soul and on this transformation appears in many traditions, appears in Sufism. That's why often Sufis authors in general give us the impression of being completely uninterested in exactness of some facts or in the imperatives of logic, as this would be a question of just external worldly things. So we would want, exactly as scholars would want, very precise quotes and from where. And often this doesn't happen in the Sufi teachings, because for them the landmarks of morality and the spiritual, mystical life are much more important, is where the attention goes. The other things are less relevant. History, historical facts are not so important as what is echoing in our heart. What is the echo of that? The fact that the situation happened in that way or not, if somebody, or if it's the philosophy of Ibn Arabi or of the other, is ultimately less relevant. What is relevant is how we can connect and how our soul can be nourished from all this. In our modern times, we can say that the main crisis is not a crisis of the climate of the energy resources, but essentially is a crisis of morality. We lack models and we lack clarity in life. It's a confusion who would be a model, and we look for models just in people who have achievement in social status. In the Sufi tradition, for example, they even make a difference between what they name the universal man, which means the perfect man, and the social man. The social man, it would be just taken by, not that the social interactions in themselves are something wrong, but just social man would mean just being taken by shallow values, while the universal man is a human being who really opens to the real meaning of life and of the whole cosmos. Nisargadatta Maharaj, that great master of Advaita Vedanta, said that without self-realization no virtue is genuine. Why he said so? Because he said you cannot pretend that you love others as yourself as long as you don't know yourself, as long as you don't connect really with yourself. So first, when you know who you are, you know that you are one with all the others, and then love blossoms naturally, and all these moral values. Maybe such an affirmation is a little bit extreme. Without self-realization, no virtue is genuine. We can start with an intuition of that, and then cultivating these virtues like compassion and love as an intuition of that essence. We are not yet maybe realized beings, and still an intuition of that oneness may inspire us to look for beauty, to look for truth. And then that longing for such qualities is a way of bringing us closer to that, and that insight of who we are will bring even deeper these moral qualities. But in general, in our modern times, people do not recognize this harmony that exists in themselves. It's a constant tension, and this we'll see is expressed in the Sufi tradition as a conflict between our lower nature. Sometimes this lower nature is named Nafs. We will see Nafs can mean soul or spirit, but in many contexts Nafs simply means this lower nature. And then there is Ruh, the spiritual nature. And then it's a conflict between these two, so the longing for truth, and then it's just the dependence or the strong power of habits, which is related to this nafs. And then these two are like in a fight in our heart. And whenever, for example, we just honor the physical values or materialist values, we are honor this lower, and we bring the attention to these lower tendencies of our being. So then our soul is taken by these limitations, and still this struggle continues, and people feel often a tension. Many times I hear this, I struggle with this, I struggle with that. It's an inner struggle. Our soul is in a struggle. We come to use this word so much. I struggle with this, I struggle with that. We struggle with our doubts, with our lack of understanding. And still, our being is not a being of struggle. Our being can integrate all this. There is something. Who we are ultimately is a reality in which all this can be embraced. It's a holistic view that can be revealed, as we will see, simply going deeper. But this uneasiness in our time is resolved just by taking some pills or drinking, just trying to escape such tensions. People come to acknowledge a state of peace or tranquility as long as there is an ignoring the situation. Ignoring, it's like forgetting. But if a human being is on a spiritual path, and this is like a Sufi novice as well, we realize that is in the end where we bring the attention. So we cannot hope for having a nourishment of our soul and to open to this truth of eternity and oneness as long as we give attention and feed these ideas, emotions, tendencies that are rooted in dualism and agitation. So the temporary satisfaction cannot bring the ultimate certainty, that freedom of being. And realizing this, we come to the same question, who am I? And looking for truth, we realize that the only way to resolve this or to come to that is not just through intellect and through thoughts and through a philosophical idea or another, but through this intuition, through this tremor, through this longing, aliveness of our heart. In the Sufi tradition, we have even this metaphor of the polytheism of many eyes, of many me, these multiple personalities. Maybe those who are familiar with the teachings of Gurdjieff, Uspensky, the fourth way, is very much present there. When I am identified with anger, I am just lost in anger. But then anger dissolves, and then for a while I am at peace. But then I have a strong desire, and then I become just that desire. Then I become frustration. Then I become this and that. That's why Gurdjieff speaks about multiple personalities, or we find this idea of polytheism. Polytheism in the sense that we have many gods, is me as anger, me as fear, and we are just honoring one after another. And then the solution is just coming back to who we are, to that unification, that witness in which all these aspects are appearing. So the object, we can say, of our aspiration consists in the realization of who we are, that state of perfect, the revelation of the spiritual heart of Atman, or the perfect universal man, as the Sufi tradition is speaking, becoming godlike, or being only the truth. To become like God, according to Sufi tradition, means an integration of all. So an integration, an assimilation of all that God will represent. So means creation, beautiful creation with levels of wonderment, grace, and not submission to just a representation or a dogmatic idea, but an embrace of all this freedom of existence. The Sufi would say, loving to save, not loving to be saved. So it's just that vision in which everything is embraced. In the Sufi tradition, it was said that man is the culmination of beings. He must not sell himself to anyone. He is an end in himself, and his purpose in life is to decipher himself. So man is the culmination of beings. This is what Rumi said in Masnavi. Masnavi is a very special text. It is one of the most influential books on Sufism, named sometimes the Quran in Persian. Some name it the most influential or the greatest mystical poem in the world literature, the greatest mystical poem. Masnavi has around 25,000 verses, so 50,000 lines, which means twice as Ramayana, that Indian epic. And basically is a spiritual text that teaches Sufis how to reach their goal of being truly in love with God. And the text is mostly about these levels of the nafs, how to purify these nafs. It took the last 15 years of the life of Rumi. To make the point of this, so to explain that man must not sell himself to anyone, he is an end of himself, and his purpose in life is to decipher himself. Rumi has a story. All these stories are as a poem. A story about a man who knew the language of animals. The story says that there was a man who owned a cock, a dog, a mule, and a horse. He also had a slave. And somehow, with the grace of Musa, he learned the knowledge of the animals, especially of the domestic animals. So he was granted with this gift, And one day he overheard the cock telling the dog that the horse would die. His horse would die. So when he heard this, immediately he sold the dog in that the horse in that evening, and in this way he was saved. Next day he heard the cock assure the dog that the mule would die. So knowing about this, he sold also his mule in the same day. Things would happen the way in which the cock would say. Later on, the cock said to the dog that the slave, the slave of that man, would die. So the man went and sold his slave as well. And he was happy with all these achievements and the fact that he would know the language of the animals. But then he heard the cock saying to the dog that this man was doomed to die. So he was completely confused, and then running to Moses, he beseeched the prophet to save him. To this, the Moses replied, "Now go sell yourself and save yourself." Now go sell yourself and save yourself. This is a story that tells us many useful things. It tells us that actually we cannot really find a real transformation in life and the real strategy just in this way. No, it's like, now go sell yourself and save yourself. We cannot do this. All this story is also a metaphor about these powers which we have. So the animals are simply expressions of the powers that we have, of some gifts or energies, powers of our soul, which shouldn't be sold. So you must not sell yourself to anyone. Rather, honor all this. Be aware of the signs that are coming, and not be more self-entangled in problems. Don't be just selfish looking for a material earning, but look for who you are. Own and acknowledge your own qualities. So, as a conclusion of this, Rumi says that human being, because of his basic nature, helplessness and insecurity, is often compelled to cling to such external security like health, power, manipulation of belief, but that will not save us. Shams of Tabriz, the friend of Rumi, the master of Rumi, said, "The path to the truth is a labor of the heart, not of the head. Make your heart your primary guide, not your mind. Meet, challenge, and ultimately prevail over your nafs with your heart. Knowing your nafs will lead you to the knowledge of God." And Al-Ghazali, another great Sufi mystic, said, our focus should shift from treating diseases of the body. Such diseases compromise an already fleeting life. More attention should be directed to treating diseases of the heart, of the soul, which has an infinite lifetime. So I hope that this perspective already really touches something or opens us to contemplate where I put my attention in my life. Where do I put my attention in this life? And the efforts that I make in this life, how much is for having a new house, getting a new car, new clothes, or buying or eating better food and so on, and how much is for a transformation of the soul. One of the most common terms in the Sufi psychology, well, as we'll see, maybe it's not even correct to speak about all these domains as a psychology is a knowledge of the soul, but is also spirituality, spiritology, because it's a knowledge of that essence. But one of these main concepts is this concept of nafs, which, as I said, is, according to different contexts, can mean different things. In yoga, I would say there is a more structured terminology, and we have more consensus in terminology compared to Sufism. Here, from one tradition to another, from one mystic to another, we can find different interpretations and different meanings of a term or another. Still, what is our focus now is not to look who is right or why that, but to look in a wider perspective and to understand what is behind all this and what is this really meaning of such a naf. Yes, so the nafs can mean the lower nature versus ruh, which is the, let's say, the spirit, the superior nature, and then the kalb is the place of the struggle between these two tendencies. But sometimes nafs means also soul, and in this context, when we speak about the stages of the nafs, you'll see that the pure nafs is basically the realized being. So in this context, nafs is simply the soul that has a different journey. According to the Sufi tradition, this process of purifying the nafs is a process that should focus on our inner transformation, not on the external world. We tend to blame others, we tend to say that it's the fault of somebody else, that others are lacking honesty, or we were traumatized about this and that situation, or disappointed, and so on. In the Sufi tradition, we will be amazed to see how such a statement like "I'm disappointed" wouldn't be accepted by a sheikh. It's not about disappointment. Disappointment, by the way, is one of the capital sins in the Sufi tradition. It's actually the second capital sin, disappointment. And we may inquire why. We will speak about this a little bit later, because essentially we should be in connection with who we are. And if we trust who we are, if we trust God, there cannot be any disappointment. Yes, we can open to friendship and all these human values, but the disappointment related to a human value shouldn't, or human relationship shouldn't in any way shake that certainty and that trust in who we essentially are. So this focus on self-improvement and self-transformation should be an internal process and not an external one. It's not about fighting friends or enemies or family or whatever, but it's an inner transformation. Sometimes it is put in this term of an inner fight. That's why they speak about a holy jihad, a fight inside. No, jihad sometimes was associated with fanaticism and extreme radical tendencies, but the real jihad is just an expression of this inner transformation. Fight against our lower tendencies. Yes, in the Sufi tradition there is this concept of fighting or dealing. It's not about suppressing there as well, but is about not keeping indulgence with this lower nature of our being. Sometimes in this new age time we may have a confusion in this. We may say, well, all my things are, it's my anger, but it's also part of myself, and I shouldn't be criticized, to keep this criticism with myself. I should accept everything. I should accept my anger. I should accept my fear. I should accept, because nothing should be denied, and so on. Well, indeed, while in the end you witness, you accept in that sense of witnessing all this, is not an indulgence. And maybe this concept of a fight with that, because that is a lower tendency. That anger, yes, it's not to be blamed and it's not to punish yourself, but something needs to be done in order to get rid of that being lost in, being blinded by anger or fear or alienation and so on. In our times, unfortunately, this happens to so many that it seems that is like the norm, but it shouldn't. And definitely this is not the things should be. Actually, when we'll speak about these levels of the nafs, you'll see that the first 4 levels, it's only beginning with the 4 level, with the purification of the soul, they will say now we start becoming human. That means in the first levels, we are not, when we are just lost in our desires, emotions, lower tendencies, we are not really human in that full sense. Not universal, that will be later on, that universal man, but human, just human. The capacities and the beauty of a human being is not honored and ignored simply because we are just entangled in all these lower tendencies. It's like our wings, the soul, the wings of our soul cannot fly. And if we would fly, we'll have so many beautiful inspirations. It happens, for example, in a retreat, we have that openness of the heart, and then sometimes people say, it was not necessarily a deep meditation, so it was not the consequence of just a state in meditation, but as a process of transformation. Now, after a few days of retreat, they would go outside and then suddenly there's a feeling of beauty, overwhelming beauty in front of of the moon or in front of a flower, and tears, and they would say, well, I never cried out of beauty. I thought I got crazy, they would share in the end of the retreat. Such things are happening. This openness to truthfulness, beauty, those who were and participated to many of the sharings in the end of the retreats know that this is happening. But then it is also a fact that for many, going back in the world, they would say the real world, then they would be again caught in common situations, being annoyed, fighting, and then somehow forgetting about this openness of the heart. And then again it happens, and I hear situations like this. People who had this beautiful openness then start complaining and saying, well, now again the fears came, and again the struggle, and some doubts, again doubts are there, and so on. And I was contemplating, and it is just like this. Not only for one person who just doesn't continue to honor the heart, or the meditation doesn't bring that same clarity. It happens for humanity. It happens for humanity. Less and less clarity is there. No? And then maybe you observe that. No? After a retreat or after a period of intense meditation, the heart is opening, and then we just again lose ourselves in different things. And this doesn't mean that this is the real world. They will name Hridaya the bubble, the Hridaya bubble. It's not the Hridaya bubble. It's rather here that we are coming close to the truth, to the reality, and the world is the way in which we perceive and fight appears just as a bubble, because we are just struggling, and it's the ego struggling there. So yes, this jihad, this inner determination to drop all this, till when? Awakening, till when that will continue in this way. And success in this struggle with the lower nature is simply the realization of the self in the Sufi tradition. For example, Junaid of Baghdad compared this process of overcoming the lower nature of being to dying to oneself and becoming resurrected in oneself, in God. But this is exactly as the Ramana Maharshi would say, and the yogic teachings will teach us. Now, becoming a whole, perfect human being is broken in 7 stages. In Arabic, we will speak about many ways of transformation and how this is possible, but just for the moment, a short glimpse about the solution. Ibn Arabi, for example, speaks about 4 pillars of knowledge, or 4 ways in which the soul can be transformed. And he speaks about 4 elements which are also present, most of them, in our teachings in Hridaya. Silence, seclusion or solitude, hunger, fasting, and vigilance, which in this case means vigils. These are both physical actions of the body and spiritual actions of the heart. They are referring both to common people or aspirants and to people who attained a deep level of realization, who are with the soul transparent to God. For example, silence is a silence of the mouth, which is indeed not speaking, mauna, as we understand commonly, but is also a silence in which our soul is not disturbed of all the noise and doesn't create the noise of attachment to different things and resides in that stillness of being. So it's just coming to that stillness of being, which brings the real meaning of solitude, of this seclusion. Ibn Arabi, since a very young age, went in solitude. He went in solitude. Actually, all his life is a fascinating story. His mother, he was the son of a great philosopher and sheikh with big spiritual realizations himself, Ali ibn Arabi. And his son, Ibn Arabi, was raised and lived, served, especially in the night, Fatima, a great mystic, a woman who had visions. So this was the way in which he started opening himself to these visions. There is a beautiful connection between him and Ibn Rushd, one of the great philosophers of Islam, philosophers who were emphasizing the ancient tradition of Plato and Aristotle. And in that, Ibn Arabi, who was still just a young boy, he said he didn't have beard, and yet meets Ibn Rushd, who heard about him. Actually, the father of Ibn Arabi was a friend of Ibn Rushd, but Ibn Rushd, this great philosopher, was impressed by his writings. And in that meeting, the philosopher looks at Ibn Arabi, this young boy, and says, yes, to this, so asks, yes, to this Ibn Arabi said, yes, meaning is the philosophical knowledge coming to the same result as the spiritual knowledge? And so that was like a silent kind of approval, and Ibn Arabi said, yes. The philosopher was enchanted by such an answer, but then immediately Ibn Arabi said, no. And then he said, between the yes and no, the hosts of heaven are manifesting. So between this yes and no, yes, the rational knowledge can lead us or can help us, but then at the same time, there is something much more that comes through revelation. And all this world of angels, the pleroma, as the Gnostic tradition would name it, all that can be revealed by people who have nafs, who have the soul purified. When we spoke about Shambhala, and we spoke about this capacity to connect to Shambhala, if that connection is happening and will happen to some of us, that is possible through a purification of the soul. And here, in the Sufi tradition, we have even, I would say, even a more clear description of the way in which the soul can be purified. And Ibn Arabi was a man who relied, he is named as Sheikh Al-Akbar, the greatest sheikh, the greatest master of Sufi tradition. So the greatest master. And what was fascinating, and this was also acknowledged by Ibn Rushd, this great philosopher, now in these times, I'm so grateful to God to see a human being who has all this knowledge only through the revelation. So just through revelation. He didn't study. I mean, of course, he knew the Quran, but the whole refinement of the spiritual understanding came to him through meditation. And he stayed in solitude, in seclusion, for many, many years. He would go in seclusion. Actually, in the houses of these sheikhs, there would be always a room for seclusion. So they would enter there and they would stay for a few days or just parts of the day just with themselves. With themselves, but not a solitude as an isolation, a social isolation, but that solitude of being, which, as Ramana would say, coming to the pure I feeling. So it's a way of honoring again God, not just, so that essence, not just a solitude in which we try to separate from others from an external point of view. And then, apart from this, is hunger, which, according to Ibn Arabi, creates a vigilance, a sense of clarity. It is a hunger, but not in that sense of fasting that we will take a diet or so, but a fasting, or rather said, a hunger for God. It's a longing. It is not physical, and he is very, or not just physical. He said that for people completely dedicated to the divine, so in that stage of deeper development, there can be even a stage in which people would want to eat more. As it happens, for example, we can say when Kundalini energy manifests, when there is interiorization, a deep mystical state of interiorization, then appears, or it comes naturally, a lack of food. He would say fasting as a natural tendency of not a need to eat, simply because you are nourished with that light. But then in some moments there can be even a need to eat food for such people, while for normal aspirants, eating less was in general recommended. And then vigils, a vigil of the eye and a vigil of the heart. The vigil of the eye means, yes, the effort not to fall asleep, but a vigil of the heart is even more than this, because it is an aspiration to remain aware while the mind would fall asleep. It happens also in retreats. Sometimes people feel this spanda, this tremor of the heart, this aliveness, while the mind is asleep. As in the Bible, it is said in the song, I was asleep, but my heart was awake. And this is the kind of vigilance Ibn Arabi was speaking about. Now, we are going to present these stages of the nafs, the 7 nafs. First, nafs al-amara, the tyrannical self, then nafs al-lavama, the regretful self, nafs al-muhima, the inspired self, nafs al-mutmaina, the serene self, Nafs Radiya, the pleased self, Nafs Mardiya, the pleasing self, and Nafs Safiya, the pure. Sufi also comes from Safa'ul, Saf'ul, but also from Safa, purity. So the pure self, Nafs Safiya. So these are the 7 stages, and in this presentation we will try to also be aware of our level of consciousness in connection with that, the characteristics of this level and the characteristics of the levels to which we aspire. They should be seen as virtual dimensions of our being. So the whole vision of the evolving soul can be seen as these 7 nafs as coexisting, meaning that it's not that we don't have a part of serenity in our being. We do have moments in which we are at peace, or we are pleased, or there is that purity of being. But maybe a big percentage of our being is just in that fight, or in that taken by that Amara, Nafs al-Amara, the tyrannical self, taken by just lower desire, habits and addictions and so on. So the 7 nafs are like virtual dimensions, can be seen as that virtual dimensions of our being, and the soul can gradually purify such tendencies. They can be seen as archetypal tendencies of human soul, which can be purified. So exactly as in a pie chart, no, we can say that we have a part, no, a slide of our soul. It's a tyrannical, just still fighting with that addiction, with whatever substance or so, and with that anger and sexual obsessions. Then a part is related to the regretful. That means the regretful nafs is still a nafs in which we are kind of taken by this, but at least we realize and we regret. If in the first one, Nafs al-Amara is just being lost completely in that, and it's not even a regret of that. In the second one, we are taken by regrets. But still, even though we have many regrets about that, still we don't have the power. No? Disappointed. Again, I was violent with my wife, or again, I did that. But then, and you say, I will never drink again. And then again, we get drunk 1 week after. So sometimes we may not have that power, enough power in the soul, or that superior power to eliminate all those limitations. And then it's inspired naf. The inspired naf is when the connection with the divine starts happening, or some insights, some spiritual insights are happening. And we may say that this is all that is, no? When you have these illuminations is all what we are looking for. But you see, it's still a part of the journey. This inspired naf is a naf in which, while there are such inspirations, we tend to possess them. There is still arrogance, there is still pride, there is still pretense, which can be there. It happens especially for example, in spirituality, people have some special moments, but then they come to the conclusion that they are realized, or that they are so good and they know everything, and so on. Further is the serene naf, which is, as I said, the first stage of really human being, when your soul is finally at peace. You are at peace. You look in your soul and you see that there is peace. There is a condition of balance, actually. And exactly as when we speak in, for example, about Kundalini awakening, and we speak about the fact that the yin and yang, the two tendencies, Ida and Pingala, Hatha, the sun and moon, need to be in balance, you'll see that the peaceful Naf is very much about being able to integrate the two extremes, or to be unmoved by all these tendencies towards this or that, like, dislike, and so on. More than this, more than just a peace, there is bliss enough. When there is the joy, there is the bliss of being. Then further is the pleasing enough. Is not just that this peace and joy is in our heart, but then is pleasing to God, they would say, is a cosmic, is like an openness to a cosmic dimension of that. So that means it's not anymore just state in which my personal soul is satisfied, but it touches cosmic bliss, and I'm constantly in that. And then the pure nafs will be that state of total identification or oneness with the divine, dissolution in the divine. So these satsangs actually are not for us to get informed about all this, but to be transformed. So we'll need to contemplate. While we'll describe all this, it is a need to contemplate on all these aspects. Now, still, before going further, I'm just briefly, it's not for us now to go in a lot of details, but I would just, since we mentioned about nafs, about souls, you see there are lataifs or latifa. It's the latifa is the means the subtle, and they refer to the psycho-spiritual capacities or organs. In some Sufi traditions, this nafs is, as I said, the lower nature, which should be harmonized by the heart, by qalb. Spirit is that higher capacity of our being, but then is also, there are also three other dimensions. For the moment, we don't need to go further. It's just an insight. So these three, sir, kafi, and akfa or ikfa, are like organs, we can say, organs or capacities through which we can access deeper realities of the cosmos and of our being. Meaning that, for example, exactly as we say in the science of yoga about chakras, if you want to know the mental realm and to refer to the mind, focus on Ajna chakra, because somehow Ajna is the subtle organ of mental knowledge. If you want to refer to will, focus on Manipura chakra, is there like an organ of knowledge related to will, and the same, in connection with different things. But all this now, that's why we can get so many insights in the Sufi tradition. All these are related to the heart. And there is this doctrine that we have also in the yogic tradition. The human being is a microcosm, the universe is the macrocosm, and it's a resonance. We know a part of the cosmos because there is in us that quality or that aspect in our being as well. So it's through a reflection. That's why we can say, so now it's the idea that appears, which I hope can give us some insights. You cannot know about love, for example, unless there is, let's say, an organ or a capacity of our heart to love. Yes? So this love as a universal quality, divine quality, is acknowledged because there is love in our being. Now, speaking about these stages, if there is a possibility for us to have a vision of Shambhala or to have the vision of Virgin Mary, that is because we have in our being a kind of part or a dimension of the heart which can resonate with this. So more specifically, we can say that there are these kathi, arcane, through which we can see the mysteries of the cosmos. And then knowing God is not with my ego. Knowing God is with a special quality of my being, with the most intimate reality of my heart. That's why the Christian mystics and the Sufis, Ibn Arabi would say, God knows himself through himself. In my heart, God knows himself through himself, which means that that dimension of the divine in me is able to know that. And all these potential capacities are simply opened through meditation, through this openness of the heart. In the beginning, it's like, I don't feel my heart, I don't feel anything. But then more and more, these domains are opening. And why this is relevant? Because you'll see when we'll speak about the remedies in the Sufi tradition is, for example, the evocation of the divine names. And for example, we evoke the compassionate one, the merciful, the loving one, Al-Rahman, Al-Rahman, Al-Rahim. So the merciful, the compassionate one is more than just my compassion. So how we develop compassion? How we develop compassion? We'll say simply by making acts of compassion. So being compassionate to a person that is in need, developing this capacity step by step, yes? This makes sense. And this is the personal approach, which is also, we may find even in psychotherapy. Psychotherapists definitely will tell us, well, be more compassionate. Maybe it's not necessarily a very classical recommendation, but of course psychotherapists are human beings who also have a heart and who also understand the need. Yes, develop compassion. So this is one way you develop in a personal way a progressive development of this quality. My heart starts knowing compassion, but opening myself to Al-Rahman, Al-Rahim, and here I'm not, we will not focus on Islamic names or the names of God in the Islamic tradition. We can say openness to Tara. to the goddess of compassion. But I'm referring to this because here, maybe even more clearly, we can understand this dimension. So you open to that God as compassion in your heart. So this compassion of my being, which can be developed, I develop compassion. But I can still feel myself that still in many situations I am not compassionate, or that compassion is not something with which I resonate too much. Then what? Then I surrender to God as compassion. I surrender to Tara. What means? It just means an infinite grace of compassion, which is rooted in that very same essence. We will speak about this. All these divine qualities like beauty, love, compassion are simply emanations of the same spanda, we would say in yoga, from the same tremor, initial vibration, the source of everything. But then they manifest as archetypal powers, and they are all rooted in the same reality. In the tantric tradition, we have Dasha Mahavidyas, the 10 great cosmic wisdoms. They are like gateways to the divine, and they are gateways through which we come to acknowledge all these qualities. So the point is that our soul can be healed and purified by evoking that. So I can definitely develop compassion in that progressive way, but I can also invoke that infinite reality. This is possible because we have in our being that. We have as, let's say, an organ of spiritual knowledge, an organ through which we can know. And just again, a little bit of this, how this is in Naqshbandiya Sufi lineage, how these are presented in the area of the heart. And here as well, no? All these dimensions related to the heart. All these dimensions. So it's the nafs, the qalb, the heart, and then all these subtle aspects, all associated with the heart. And we have also the two poles here. Or another representation in which we have the carnal soul. Again, don't identify, don't come with this idea that nafs is something bad because it's just carnal, or this is the ultimate. No, we, as I said, we will refer to nafs as soul, but we have spirit, ruh, but then it's the heart, qalb, and then inner heart, and then all this secret arcanum and the supreme, all which is knowing God. With that part of you, you know God. Not intellectually, not even through visions. Through visions, you'll know with a second layer, let's say, when these revelations would happen, would be because your heart is open to that second layer, and so on. And all these 5 lataif, as I said, lataif are these organs or capacities of the heart. You see, they are all associated with the heart, are in connection with the heart. Here we have nafs, you see, pointed in connection with the mind. But all the other are here, akfa or ikfa being the Supreme. There you know God. Now don't go into what is in the left, what is in the right, because again, it's a matter of a symbolic representation. It's not that is in the left or in the right. It's just that all this pointing of existential dimensions of our being. So in our heart, all these qualities and all these capacities are there. If we can know beauty, if we can know love, but you see, there are different levels. It's not just about knowing some qualities. Yes, that can be known. Beauty, love are a part of a capacity of our being. But that spanda, tremor, that pure essence, which is like the summum of all of them, is the effect or the expression of an even more subtle reality of our heart. And then even deeper, the transcendent, the fact that we can open to a transcendental light or reality. How is it possible? Because there is something in us similar. And we have the heart with God, with a stamp. And then we will speak about all these divine qualities as divine names. This is, you see, like the Mendeleev table of the elements. No, the whole world is done by all these elements. The whole subtle world is done by these names of the divine, which we can say are divine qualities. And these are divine qualities of the cosmos, and these are divine qualities of our heart. So on them we will rely in that jihad or that fight with our attachments, with our fears. We have the power of love, the power of compassion, and they are there. And we learn how to honor and to rely on that, or on all of them. Yeah? There are not only qualities, there are also functions that are related to that. Is, for example, God, the one who answers all prayers. So the one who answers. And the one who answers our prayers. But then, of course, you may think, oh, but if I will have this resonance with God, which can answer me to all my prayers, then I am saved, and I am, this, if I can convince God to answer all my prayers and to refer to that specific God quality or attribute, that is the solution. Indeed, this is a solution, but it's not for the ego, it's not for that lower naf. To access that God that answers all prayers, we need purity, humbleness, surrender. And in that state of consciousness, that will happen. That will happen. And it's like that grace is there. So it's a matter of opening ourselves to these realities, but also it's about really believing, really honoring that more and more. So I hope that all this will be also a transmission of faith. A transmission of faith. And again, I'm not speaking about the context of Islam, or it's a trust in this power of your heart, a faith in this infinite reality of our being. And we have samples. We can know about all these divine qualities because we have samples of all of them in our heart. This is what the Sufi tradition is telling us, and this is what is obvious, in our heart is all this treasure is in our heart. Just that we ignore it. Just that we live in a bubble named this world, in which all these divine qualities, all this beauty of the heart is ignored. Now, I'm going to conclude. I had the intention to speak a little bit more about actually the divine qualities and the relationship between these names of God and that essence of our being, but then this will do in the next satsang, and then we'll start. So next satsang we'll speak a little bit about these divine qualities a little bit more, and then we'll start speaking about Nafs Alamara, the characteristics of this lower nafs, the tyrannic nafs, and all the problems. But now, in order to give you a taste of all this journey, I'm going to read for you a confession. It comes from a manuscript which was unpublished for a long time, written by a sheikh, a Naqshbandi sheikh. Naqshbandi is a Sufi lineage, mostly in India, Sufi tradition, which developed mostly in India. And this man, you'll see why he preferred not to be published until he will leave the physical body. He describes this journey as this station of the nafs, or of this self, as entering in different cities, which are nestled one in each other. So one city is in the middle, so more subtle is in the core of one which is more external, and so on. Going is like going to subtlety more and more deeper. Somehow like in the description of the stages of the prayer in the teachings of Saint Teresa of Avila, no? Going deeper and deeper in this interior castle. Here is, we can say, a similar way. Definitely this is based on, in the Sufi tradition in general, we can say this astral journey, we can name it like this. So astral projections is this path of revelation and is an important part. Mohammed he was illiterate, he was an uneducated peasant being, and he had all that revelation of the Quran. And it was just entering in states of deep inspiration. And somehow that echoed in the teachings of these Sufi mystics. That's why very much astral projection, so encountering with Archangel Gabriel or visions about Virgin Mary can appear often in the teachings of the Sufis. Somehow like the description of Dante of the whole trilogy, Dante, when he describes the paradise. René Guénon, a great esoterist, has a text, an article, a little booklet, The Esoterism of Dante, in which one of the chapters he simply says that Dante took a lot of his inspiration from a description of Ibn Arabi of all this. So basically he was copying the structure of the infernum, the structure of the paradise, the fact that they need to do ablution, so to purify in order to enter the paradise. Many details related to the journey are simply echoed in the Dante's paradise from Ibn Arabi, who lived 80 years, before Dante, and wrote about the Meccan revelations. So the Meccan revelations of Ibn Arabi are echoed in the teachings or in the writings of Dante. So now coming back to this text, some Sufi mystics said that this text should be read again and again. Very useful and important work in Sufism, and all the dervishes should read it often. So, the story. First, I will also describe, I will mention the levels. So first, about the city of the tyrannical self, or tyrannical nafs, that tyrannical the soul lost in attachments. As if in a dream, I reached a city that was all in the dark. It was so vast that I could neither see nor conceive of its limits. This city contained people from all nations and races. All the ugly actions of all the creatures, all the sins known and unknown to me were all around me. What I observed led me to think that never, since the beginning of time, had a ray of light from the sun of truth fallen upon this city. Not only were the sky and the roads and houses of the city in total darkness, but its citizens, who were like bats, had minds and hearts as dark as night. Their nature and their behavior were like those of wild dogs, growling and fighting with each other for a mouthful of food, obsessed by lust and anger. They killed and tore each other apart. Their only pleasure was in drinking and in shameless sex without discrimination of wives and husbands or others. Lying, cheating, gossiping, slander, stealing was their custom, with total absence of concern for others, conscience, or fear of God. Many among them call themselves Muslims. So remember, he speaks in this context, but so many call themselves religious people. No? In fact, some were considered by them to be wise men, sheikhs, teachers, men of knowledge, and preachers. A native of the city told me that it was Amara, so the name of the city is Amara, the city of freedom, where everyone did what he pleased. I asked him the nature of their ruler. He informed me that he was called his highest cleverness, and that he was an astrologer, a sorcerer, an engineer, a doctor who gave life to the ones who otherwise would die, an intelligent, learned king who had no equal in this world. His advisor and ministers were called logic, and his judges depend on the ancient law of common sense, in that sense of gregarious tendencies. His stewards were called imagination and daydreaming. All the citizens were totally loyal to their ruler, not only respecting and appreciating him and his government, but loving him, for they all felt an affinity in their nature, in their customs, in their behavior. I went to His Highness' cleverness and daringly asked, "How is it that the men of knowledge of your realm never act on their knowledge and fear God? How is it that none in this city fear the punishment of the divine, while they fear your punishment? How is it that there is no light here, nor outside, nor in your people's hearts? How is it that your subjects appear as human beings, yet their nature is like that of wild animals, and worse still?" He answered, "I, the one who can figure out how to derive personal benefit from this world, even if my benefit is their lost, I am their ideal." Unfortunately, we can see many of these images in our times, in our world. And he continued, "I have an agent in each of them. They are my servants and the servants of my agents in them. But I also have a master who guides me, and that is the devil." Now, the second stage, the city of the regretful nafs, those who start regretting. The traveler through the stages of the nafs asked the king to permit him to go to the great castle in the middle of that city. The king answered me, saying, "I rule over that castle also. That district is called regret. In the city of regret, imagination does not have total power. They also do what is called sin. They commit adultery they satisfy their lust with men and women alike. They drink and gamble, steal and murder, gossip and slander, as we do. But often they see what they have done and regret and repent." I met a man of knowledge in this city. He confirmed that they were under the jurisdiction of His Highness' cleverness, so the same king, but that they had their own administrators, whose names were arrogance, hypocrisy, bigotry, and fanaticism. Among the population were many men who appeared to be virtuous, devout, righteous, pious. I found them to be afflicted with arrogance, egotism, envy, ambition, bigotry, and in their friendships, insincerity. What I can say for the best of them is that they prayed and tried to follow God's commands because they feared God's punishment and hell. When I had first come to the city of regret, I had seen that in its center there was yet another castle. I asked the learned inhabitant about it. He said that it was called the city of love and inspiration. I asked about its ruler and was told that he was called His Highness Wisdom, knower of God. This king, said my informant, had a prime minister whose name was Love. If ever any one of us enters the city of love and inspiration, my informant went on, we don't accept him back to our city. For anyone who goes there becomes like all the rest of that city's population, totally attached to that prime minister, Love, prime minister, and is ready to give up anything, all that he has, his possessions, his family and children, and even his life, for the sake of that prime minister called Love. Our Sultan, His Highness Cleverness, finds this attribute absolutely unacceptable. He fears the influence of those who have this quality, for both their loyalty and their actions seem to be illogical and are not understandable by common sense or by this gregarious reason of the nafs, of Amara, the tyrannic self or regretful self. We hear that the people of that city call upon God, chanting and singing, even with the accompaniment of the reed flute and tambourines and drums, and that doing so, they lose their senses and go into ecstasy. So, like the Sufi, Sema, chanting, or like bhajans, no? Chanting to God. Our religious leaders and theologians from the hypocrisy realm, no, find this unacceptable. Therefore, none of them even dreams of setting food in the city of love and inspiration. Now about this third realm, so this city of the inspired nafs, of this love and inspiration. The city of love and inspiration is a complex place with both positive and negative districts. Egotism, imitation, and hypocrisy are still real dangers at this stage. The traveler enters by sincerely saying the sacred phrase, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but God. He is ultimately, essentially, a statement of oneness, nothing to be honored than the heart. There is nothing to be honored. There is no God to be adored other than the ultimate reality. La ilaha illallah. Soon I found a dervish lodge, so ashram there, a monastery, where I saw the high and the lowly, the rich and the poor together, as if one single being. I saw them loving and respecting each other, serving each other with regard, reverence, and deference, in a continuous state of pure joy. They were talking, singing their songs, and their talk captivating, beautiful, always about God and the hereafter, spiritual removed from all anxiety and pain, as if living in paradise. I did not hear or see anything that resembled dispute or quarrel, anything harmful or damaging. There was no intrigue or malice, envy or gossip. I felt immediately a peace, comfort, and joy among them. I saw a beautiful old man, consciousness and wisdom shining through him. I was attracted to him and went over and addressed him, "Oh, my dearest, I am a poor traveler and a sick one at that, seeking a remedy for my sickness of darkness and unconsciousness. Is there a doctor in this city of love and inspiration to cure me?" He stayed silent for a while. I asked his name. He told me his name was Guidance. Then he said, "My nickname is Truthfulness. Since time immemorial, not a single untruth has passed from these lips. My duty and my charge are to show the road to the ones who sincerely seek union with the Beloved." Just as a parenthesis, in this path of revelation, seeing such subtle worlds, like in the Tibetan yoga of dream, all these images are also expressions of our being. So meeting such a guide is basically objectifying a dimension of our being. So in such a world, you finally find an old sage, but that is equally, because that is an inner and outer dimension, this astral world, that is in that consciousness of oneness, that is simply an expression of your being. It's like you awaken to that guidance in you, and you awaken. Since time immemorial, not a single untruth has passed from these lips. So you awaken to that truthfulness of your being. The guide then describes to the traveler the district of the imitators. So apart from this is beautiful in itself, is all that we need to continue. Just that there are still in the soul other tendencies. Love would be enough, but it's just that, it's just pretending and bringing attention, giving attention to other more limiting dimensions. So there is, in this third city of the illumined Nafs, the district of the imitators, which is within the city of love and inspiration. This is the district of the hypocrites who imitate the other forms of worship and spiritual teachings without inner understanding. So we do gestures, but without really echoing. The outer one is called the district of the imitators. The skillful doctor you seek to cure your ills is not within that district. Neither is the pharmacy that has medicine for the sickness of heedlessness, darkness of the heart. They themselves are sick with the sickness of themselves. They assign partners to God and are masters only of imitation. They hide their intrigue, duplicity and malice well, although their tongues appear to be pronouncing the prayers and the names of God, and you find them often in the circles of the dervishes, of the people who are praying, and you will not find with them the balm to soothe the pains of unconsciousness and forgetfulness. So the traveler goes deeper in the district of serene Nafs, the fourth level. The inner work needed at this stage is to reduce the sense of separateness from God and to begin to unify the various tendencies and identifications we have developed. Here, the guide sends him to the district of the spiritual warriors. So at this level, serene nafs appear as spiritual warriors, but we will see the description of them is different from just the warriors we may imagine. I followed his advice and went to the district of the warriors. The people I met there were weak and thin, gentle, thoughtful, thankful, devoted to praying, obeying, fasting, contemplating, and meditating. Their strength lay in putting into action what they know in their heart. I became close to them and saw that they had left all the failures of character produced by egoism and egotism and the shadow of unconsciousness. I fought hard day and night with my ego, but still I was left with the polytheism of many me's and I's fighting among each other. So with this ego, me, this and that. Even though they faced one God. So even though all these me's, all this anger, fear, this and that, all are facing the same reality, it's still a polytheism there, fighting with that. This, my sickness of setting up many eyes as patterns to God, cast heavy shadows over my heart, hid the truth, and kept me in heedlessness. I told the doctors of my sickness, the hidden polytheism, the awful heedlessness, the darkness of the heart, and asked for help. They told me, even in this place of those who battle their egos. So in yoga we'll name this Vira Sadhana, the path of the spiritual warrior, the one who has tapas, who has a practice, a dedication. Even there, they say, there is no cure to your ills. They advise me to travel to a district called supplication, so prayer and meditation, so openness to grace. Perchance there, they said, would be a doctor to cure me. So now he enters in the fifth realms, the district of pleased nafs. The traveler next reaches the district of meditation, district of pleased nafs. When I came to the district of meditation, I saw its inhabitants quiet and peaceful, remembering God inwardly, reciting His beautiful names. To each and every one of them, a son of the heart had been born. A son of the heart had been born. Son, not the son outside, but the son as a child. The child of the heart had been born. And this refers to these subtle aspects of the heart, subtle dimensions, those capacity of knowing, deeper dimension of our being. Rumi also speaks about this. My heart is a virgin with Jesus in her womb. So my heart is pregnant with Christ consciousness. So a son of the heart had been born to each and every one of them. Their ways were gentle and courteous. They barely spoke with each other for fear of preventing each other from deep meditation. Light as feathers they were, yet they fear most to be a burden and load on others. I spent many years in the district of meditation and contemplation, but I was not completely cured of the hidden dualism of I and he that still cast heavy shadows of my heart. I and he, me and God, still this dualism. My tears ran in torrents, wretched and vain, so pale, exhausted, and in total awe I fell into a strange state where an ocean of sadness surrounded me. As I stood there helpless, sad in ecstasy, so it is a sweet longing. Saint Teresa of Avila says about this stage as well. She would say, this is not coming from devil, because devil, while gives the sadness, cannot give this sweetness of this nostalgia and that longing. So sad, helpless, in ecstasy, there appeared the beautiful teacher whom I had first met in these strange lands. He looked upon me with compassionate eyes. O poor slave of himself, in exile in this foreign land. O wanderer away from home, O poor wretched one, you cannot find your cure in this state of spirit. Leave this place, go to that district yonder, so far away. The name of that quarter is Fana, annihilation. Fana is that surrender. It's an important, very important concept in Sufism. Surrender. It's surrender, annihilation. There you'll find doctors who have annihilated their selves, who have no being, so no ego, who know the secret to be now not, be not, be not, so that you will be, so that you will be, so that you will be forever. Now the sixth district, the city of the Nafs, pleasing to God. The traveler goes deeper within. Right away, I went to the district of annihilation of the ego. I saw its population mute, speechless, as if dead, with no strength in them to utter a word. They had left the hope of any benefit from talk, and they were ready to give up their souls to the angel of death. They were totally unconcerned whether I was there or not. Even in that place among them, I felt pain. Yet, when I wished to describe the symptom of my ill, I couldn't find a body nor any existence so as to say, this is my body, this is I. Then I knew that that which was I turned into the owner of me. Then I knew that to say that being is mine is a lie. And to lie is a sin for everyone. See how they see at this level, even to say me or this being is mine is a lie, and this lie is a sin. No? To lie is a sin. So you don't continue to just believe in that limitation. Then I knew then that to ask the real owner for what was mine was the hidden polytheism of which I had wished to rid myself. What then was to be done? So here it's exactly as the yogic tradition in Advaita, they will say neti, neti, not this, not this. So this going denying any kind of identification with an object, any objectification, neti, neti. In my despair, if I were to call upon him and say, "Oh Lord," then there would be two, I and he. So not even this, "Oh God," that would preach a duality. I and the one, I and he, I and the one from whom I seek help, the will and the willed, the desire and the desired, the lover and the beloved. Oh, so many. I knew not the remedy. The wailing attracted the pity of the angel of inspiration, who read to me from the book of divine inspiration. First, annihilate your actions. He gave that to me as a gift. First, so surrender your actions. As I stretched my hand to receive it, I saw that there was no hand. It was a composition of water and ether and earth and fire. I had no hand to take with. I had no power to act. There is only one who has power, the all-powerful. Whatever action occurs through me, it belongs to the absolute actor. All power, all acts, I refer to him, and I left all that happened to me and through me in this world. No? Like the perfect attitude of karma yoga, that total transparency. Then I wished to live my attributes, those qualities that make one's personality. When I looked, what I saw was not mine. Then when I talk, what I said was not mine. Neither was the content mine. Totally helpless, I was cut off from all the attributes, visible and invisible, that distinguished me, from all qualities, exterior and interior, that had made me, me. With all my being and feeling and spirit, I suppose myself a pure essence. Then I sensed that even this was duality. Then even my essence, so this I feeling, we can say, that sense of me, was taken away from me. Then even this I feeling was taken away from me. Still, I wish and longed for him, for God. I felt the meaning of the one who longs for me is my true servant. God who encompasses all things. So understanding directly all this, one who is before the before and after the after, and all that is evident and all that is hidden, and he is the knower of all things, became manifest in the secret of my heart. No? He is the knower of all things, became manifest in the secret of my heart. Even then, I wished that the secret of to die before dying, this is a metaphor, to die before dying, the one who dies before dying, means to die as an ego, will not die when he's dying because there is no ego there. So I wished that the secret to die before dying be actualized in me. Oh, again, this hidden duality of I and the one I long for, these two cannot be the truth. So even in that longing to go deeper, any duality, and thus he arrives to the final point of the journey, that statement, that state of the pure Naf. This stage is described by this sheikh in this way. What ill is that gives pangs of pain when I move, when I wish, when I long, when I ask for help, when I pray and beg? What strange state have I fallen into, difficult to resolve? Helpless, I gave all these to their owner and waited at the gate of acquiescence in agony of death, senseless, without thought or feeling, as if dead, expecting death to take me at every breath. This is very much what is happening in self-inquiry when you bring everything into this pure I feeling in the heart. Now all, and you just, as Ramana said, staying in that I feeling is all that the yogi can do. But then the dissolution from that individuality to that oneness is a matter of grace. So it's like staying at the gate of acquiescence in agony of death. No? Experience death to take me at every breath. And he continued in a very beautiful way. He says, following the advice, ask your heart. So following the advice, ask your heart. I told my heart to instruct me. I said, as long as there is a trace of you in you, you cannot hear the Lord's call. Come to me, come to me. I felt the truth of it and wished that that trace of me in me would die. I immersed that trace in divine beatitude. So here he gives us a method. So that me, no, still it's a me wanting something in that. No? Ask your heart, go deeper, follow that. And he said, I immerse that trace in divine beatitude. So any mark of me dissolve in divine beatitude, this sublimation in Ananda, in bliss. An ecstasy came from me to me over that which was mine, covering it all, the taste of which is impossible to describe. Without ear, without words, without letters, I heard the invitation, come, return to me. I tried to think, what is this state? My thought could not think it. I was made to know that thought cannot think about the sacred secret. Even that knowledge was taken away from me as fast as it came to me. So everything was melted in that pure consciousness, no thoughts. And now he concludes all this description, saying, like telling us, O seeker, what has been said here is not intended to show that I know. Therefore, it will be made known to you only after I am gone from among you. It is for the benefit of the seekers of truth, for the lovers who long for the beloved, so that it may help them to know themselves, so that they may find in which of the cities I travel through they themselves are, and which of its citizens they befriend. When and if in sincerity they know their place, they will act accordingly. and know the direction of the gate of God's pleasure and be thankful. Are there any questions? If not, and if we prefer the stillness after the description of this journey, let's just conclude with a short moment of centering in the heart, just the openness to that depth where duality tends to dissolve, when the most subtle, perfect, pure reality of our being is revealed, through which we can know God, God in us, knowing God, and there is no separation. So bring the awareness in the heart. Surrender any sense of separation, mind, individuality. Dissolve any sense of duality into the bliss of the self. keeping the awareness of the sacredness of being. We conclude our satsang.
Blah, 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 blah. Come.